Chapter 1. A Star-Crossed Meeting. Jason maneuvered through the bustling corridors of Zalera 5, the vibrant trade station serving as a junction for numerous galactic paths. It was a marketplace not just of goods, but of ideas and cultures, where beings from different corners of the universe mingled and exchanged. As he rounded a corner, he nearly tripped over a figure slumped against the wall. It was an alien woman with luminous skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light of the corridor. Seeing her in distress, Jason paused. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, bending down to assess her condition. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. I am lost," she admitted, her voice a melodic whisper that hinted at her exotic origin. "Lost? Don't worry, I can help with that. I'm Jason, by the way." He extended a hand to help her up. "I'm Malin," she said, taking his hand cautiously. Jason noticed her hesitance. "You're a long way from home, aren't you, Malin? What brings you to Zalera 5? I was supposed to meet a contact here, but things didn't go as planned," Malin explained, still clutching her small bag closely. "Sounds rough. How about we find you a safe place to regroup? Do you need medical attention?" Jason's concern grew as he noticed the subtle grimace of discomfort on her face. "No, thank you. I just need to find my bearings," Malin replied, her gaze drifting around the crowded passageway. "Okay, let's get you to the central hub. It's safer there, and you can contact whoever you need to." Jason guided her through the throngs, noticing how she seemed overwhelmed by the noise and the sheer number of different species around them. As they walked, Jason tried to engage her in light conversation to ease her evident anxiety. "So, Malin, where are you from? I hope it's okay to ask." "Kalaris. It's not a well-known planet. Very secluded," she shared, her voice gaining a bit more strength as she spoke of her home. "Kalaris, huh? I can't say I've heard of it, but then again, there are probably more planets in the galaxy than there are stars in the sky," Jason joked, hoping to see a smile. Malin chuckled softly, a sound that Jason found surprisingly comforting. "Yes, that's quite true." They reached a quieter section of the station, where the chaos of the marketplace gave way to serene viewing areas. Windows showed the vast expanse of space outside, bustling with the traffic of starships and smaller vessels. "Here, we can sit for a moment," Jason suggested, pointing to a bench beside a large window. Malin sat down, looking out at the starlit cosmos. "It's beautiful, isn't it? I never get tired of watching the stars." "Me neither," Jason agreed, sitting beside her. "So, about your contact, do you need to message them? I have a communicator you can use." Malin hesitated, then accepted his offer. "Thank you, Jason. You are very kind to help a stranger like this." "That's what we do around here," Jason smiled. "Helping one another makes the galaxy a bit smaller, don't you think?" As Malin dialed her communicator, Jason watched her, intrigued by her grace and the mystery that seemed to envelop her. He wondered what series of events had brought her to this moment, and how their chance meeting might change the course of their paths. Thus began a friendship that would soon defy the vast distances of space. A friendship founded on a mutual fascination with the unknown and a shared journey into the heart of a bustling interstellar crossroads. Chapter 2. Lingua Franca. Jason leaned against the wall of his rented quarters on Zalera 5, a mug of steaming tea in his hands. Across from him, Malin sat on the edge of the couch, her brow furrowed in concentration. Between them lay a portable holoprojector that displayed dozens of glowing characters in a language Jason had never encountered before. "All right, let's try that one more time," Jason said, setting down his tea. "You say Ixal, and it means?" "Journey," Malin replied, though her voice rose slightly at the end as if questioning her own answer. "Exactly. And this one?" He tapped a glowing character that resembled a coiled ribbon. Malin hesitated, biting her lower lip. "Sandnux." "Close," Jason said. "Sandnux. It means together." Jason had been spending hours each day learning Malin's language and teaching her Standard Galactic in return. Their shared goal of communication quickly became something of a ritual, a way to pass the time while also bridging the cultural gap that separated them. I don't understand how you can keep all these words straight, Malin said, her frustration clear. Your language is so fragmented. Different words mean different things depending on their placement. Well, your language isn't exactly simple either. I mean, look at this. Jason gestured at the character still hovering in the holo display. It changes meaning depending on how much you curve the bottom line. Who came up with that rule? Malin smiled faintly. It's an ancient system. It was never meant to be easy. Jason leaned back in his chair. I think the real problem is we don't have enough snacks. I learn faster when there's food involved. Malin laughed, a soft, musical sound that made Jason grin. You're insatiable. Insatiable or just practical? He countered. Okay, let's switch. You test me this time. Very well, Malin said, sitting up straighter. She reached for the controls and flipped the display to show phrases in Standard Galactic. What does this mean? She pointed to the words. The starlight shone bright. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. I think that's Velrii Vox Venrer. Malin tilted her head. Not bad. Velrii Vox starlight shone is correct. But Venrer isn't the right term. It should be Rexel. Jason groaned. Ugh, you're right. I keep mixing those up. Velrii Vox Rexel. Got it. They continued for hours, alternating questions and answers, joking and teasing each other when they stumbled over the unfamiliar grammar. Every now and then, Jason would pause to ask Malin about her homeworld's customs or traditions, while she returned the favor by questioning him about human culture and its idiosyncrasies. So, you really had something called pizza? Malin asked, frowning slightly. Yeah, it's amazing. You've got to try it sometime. Jason's eyes lit up as he described it. It's this round dish, bread on the bottom, sauce and cheese on top, sometimes with other stuff like vegetables or meats. You can make it 100 different ways. That sounds intriguing, Malin said, although her expression showed some skepticism. But I think my people would find the idea of eating so many different ingredients at once quite strange. You don't know what you're missing. If I ever get the chance, I'll make one for you. Only if you promise not to put, what do you call them? Anchovies. She wrinkled her nose. Jason chuckled. Deal. The lessons continued late into the evening, their voices blending as they traded words and phrases, corrections and explanations. By the time they stopped, the holoprojector was dim, and the room was bathed in the faint glow of the station's ambient lighting. Do you think it'll ever get easier? Malin asked, leaning back with a sigh. I think so, Jason said, his voice warm. Every time you tell me one of your words, or I teach you one of mine, it feels like we're building something. Something worth having. Malin glanced at him, a soft smile tugging at her lips. I think I understand what you mean, and for that, I'm grateful. Chapter 3, The Festival of Lights. The station hummed with energy as the annual Festival of Lights reached its peak. People of countless species milled through the wide concourses of Zalera 5, some in colorful robes, others in shimmering metallic armor or flowing organic fabrics. The air buzzed with laughter and conversation, and the smells of alien cuisines wafted through the corridors. Jason had heard of the festival before but had never experienced it himself, until now. Beside him, Malin walked slowly, her gaze flitting from one glowing installation to the next. This is extraordinary, she murmured. Jason smiled. Yeah, it's something else, huh? I thought you might like it. Each of these light displays is made by a different species. It's sort of a way for everyone to show off their culture. Malin paused in front of a swirling column of lights, the patterns shifting like liquid in zero gravity. I didn't expect something so beautiful here. Zalera 5 always struck me as practical, not artistic. Even the most practical places can surprise you, Jason said, gesturing toward a nearby vendor. Hey, you hungry? They've got something called Navarian glow fruit over there. Tastes like citrus and sugar rolled into one. Malin shook her head, smiling softly. No, but thank you. I'd rather keep exploring for now. Suit yourself. Jason grabbed a small bag of glow fruit anyway and popped one into his mouth as they continued walking. So, tell me, what does Kalaris do for festivals? Anything like this? Malin hesitated. Not exactly. Our festivals are more solemn, ceremonial. We don't have anything quite like these light sculptures. Instead, we gather in communal circles and sing. The melodies carry meaning, and everyone's voice contributes to the whole. Jason raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a lot of pressure. What if someone sings out of tune? She laughed, a clear musical sound. It's not about perfection. It's about participation. Everyone contributes their voice, and the imperfections become part of the harmony. Ha! Jason considered that as they walked past a floating orb of blue light that seemed to pulse in time with a low, rhythmic hum. That's kind of cool, actually. I mean, I can't carry a tune to save my life, but maybe I'd fit in at one of those gatherings. Malin gave him a playful look. Somehow, I doubt you'd be shy about joining in. Jason grinned. You're right. I'd probably be the loudest one there. They continued through the festival, stopping now and then to watch holographic performances or to admire intricate laser sculptures. Jason found himself talking more and more, filling the air with stories about human traditions, jokes about his own clumsiness, and questions about Malin's world. She listened intently, offering snippets of her own culture in return, and gradually the nervous tension that had lingered in their earlier encounters began to dissolve. At one point, they reached a grand central square where a massive light show was underway. Beams of color shot into the air, twisting and looping before settling into kaleidoscopic patterns. A soft, melodic chime accompanied the display, and the crowd gathered in hushed awe. Malin stood close to Jason, her eyes wide as she watched the lights shift and swirl. It's mesmerizing, she said softly. Jason nodded. It's like the galaxy's biggest fireworks show, except it's not dangerous, and it lasts a lot longer. She glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. I'm glad you brought me here, Jason. Hey, I told you. I'm all about helping out, he said with a lopsided smile. Besides, I figured you could use a break from all the heavy stuff you've been dealing with. Malin's smile grew warmer. I think you were right. As the light show built toward its climax, Jason noticed how close they were standing. His hand brushed hers, and he felt a jolt. Not unpleasant, but unexpected. He glanced at her, and she met his eyes. For a moment, the noise of the crowd faded into the background, and it was just the two of them, standing together under the dancing lights. He hesitated, then spoke softly. Malin, I'm really glad I met you. Her expression softened, and she reached out to lightly touch his arm. I'm glad too, Jason. Their hands found each other, tentatively at first, and then with more certainty. Jason's heart raced as he leaned closer, and when Malin didn't pull away, he closed the distance. Their lips met, and the kiss was gentle, exploring, filled with the quiet promise of something deeper. When they parted, Malin's luminous eyes searched his. Jason? Yeah? He asked, still holding her hand. She seemed about to say something, but then shook her head, a faint smile on her lips. Thank you. Jason smiled back, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the lights around them. Anytime. They stood together as the finale of the light show filled the square with a cascade of shimmering colors. Their connection solidified in that simple, unspoken understanding. Chapter 4. Echoes of the Past ***. Jason sat on the edge of the observation deck, his feet dangling above the vast mechanical underbelly of Zalera 5. The usual hum of machinery was muted here, a secluded spot that overlooked the station's hidden support systems. Above him, a massive, curved window revealed the endless black of space, dotted with the pale lights of distant stars. Malin sat a few feet away, cross-legged on the metal surface. She'd been silent for a long time, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the window. Jason had learned to wait during these moments. Whatever was on her mind, she'd speak when she was ready. You mentioned once that humans write down their history, Malin said at last, her voice quiet. Jason turned toward her, surprised by the sudden question. Yeah, we keep records. books, digital archives, oral traditions. It helps us remember where we've been and, sometimes, avoid making the same mistakes. Malin nodded slowly, still not looking at him. We don't do that. My people rely on memory, our own and those passed down by our elders. The words change with each retelling. It's considered fluid. Does that ever cause problems? Jason asked, genuinely curious. I mean, if everyone remembers something a little differently, how do you know it's accurate? Accuracy isn't the goal, Malin replied. It's the meaning that matters. The lessons we take from the past, not the precise details. Jason leaned back on his hands, thinking that over. I guess that makes sense in its own way. But what happens if the lessons get twisted, or the meaning changes over time? That's the risk, Malin admitted. And it's part of why I've been conflicted. Jason sat up straighter. Conflicted about what? She turned to him finally, her expression weary. About what I should do. About where I belong. My family expects me to follow certain traditions, to take on responsibilities that I don't know if I can accept. Jason watched her closely. Sounds like a lot of pressure. Malin gave a soft laugh, though there was no humor in it. You have no idea. Try me, he said. I might not understand everything about your culture, but I'm good at listening, and I'm pretty good at finding solutions. She hesitated, then shifted to face him more fully. When I was born, my family placed a mark on me. It's a symbol of my role in our society. It means I'm destined to join the High Council, to be a voice for my people. Jason whistled low. Wow, that sounds important. It is, but it's not what I want, Malin said. I've spent my whole life preparing for it, and now that the time is near, I feel trapped. I can't imagine a future where I'm free to choose my own path. Jason considered that for a moment. So what happens if you say no? Malin's expression darkened. No one says no. It's unheard of. The mark is more than a symbol. It's a promise, a bond. To reject it would be to reject my family, my people. That's harsh, Jason said, leaning closer. But you're not happy with it. And if you're not happy, how can you lead your people? How can you make good decisions for them? Malin looked at him, her luminous eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know. I've been trying to find an answer, but every choice feels wrong. Jason reached out, placing a hand gently on her arm. Maybe you don't have to choose yet. Maybe you just need more time. And maybe you don't have to do it alone. She searched his face, as if looking for some hidden truth. Do you really think that? Yeah, Jason said firmly. You're not the only one who's struggled with family expectations. I can't say I know exactly what you're going through, but I do know that sometimes, when you're stuck, you just need someone to stand by you while you figure things out. Malin's shoulders relaxed slightly. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, Jason said with a small smile. But it's doable. We'll figure it out together. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she reached out and placed her hand over his. Thank you, Jason. He gave her a reassuring nod. No problem. Now, how about we get out of this gloomy corner and grab something to eat? I think better on a full stomach. Malin laughed, the sound brighter this time. You and your food. Fine. Lead the way. Jason helped her to her feet, and they left the observation deck together, their steps in sync as they made their way back into the lively chaos of the station. For the first time in a long time, Malin felt a glimmer of hope, not from her people's stories, but from the simple act of sharing her burden with someone who cared. Chapter 5: The Rift. Jason ducked into the dimly lit cafe on the edge of Zalera 5's central marketplace. The air inside was thick with the aroma of spices from a dozen different worlds, and the low hum of conversation filled the room. He spotted Malin immediately, sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a small cup of steaming tea. Her posture was tense, and she didn't look up when he approached. Hey, Jason said softly as he slid into the seat across from her. Got your message. What's going on? Malin glanced up briefly, her luminous eyes clouded. My family contacted me again. They're insisting I return home. Jason frowned. I thought we agreed to wait until you were ready. They don't care if I'm ready? Malin replied, her voice tinged with frustration. They've made it clear that my personal feelings don't matter. They want me back now. Jason leaned forward. And what do you want? I don't know, she admitted. Part of me feels obligated to go to fulfill my role. But another part of me can't bear the thought of giving up the freedom I've found here. You don't have to decide right this second, Jason said, his tone gentle. Just take it one step at a time. We'll figure it out together. Malin shook her head. You don't understand. It's not just about me. If I refuse, it could cause a rift within my family. I'd be seen as selfish, dishonorable. My people value loyalty above all else. Loyalty is great, Jason said, but not when it means sacrificing your own happiness. If your family truly cares about you, they should want you to be happy. She looked at him sharply. That's not how it works in my culture. Duty comes first. Individual desires are secondary. Jason held her gaze. Then maybe it's time to change how things work. Malin let out a bitter laugh. You make it sound so easy. Of course it's not easy, he said. But if you never push back, nothing will change. What good is fulfilling your duty if it leaves you miserable? It's not that simple, Malin said, her voice rising. You don't understand what's at stake. This isn't just a personal decision. It affects my entire family, my entire community. Jason Liu. I know enough, Jason said firmly. I know you deserve to live your life on your terms. And I know that no matter what happens, I'm with you. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling between them. The cafe's soft chatter continued around them, but it felt distant, as if they were in their own little bubble. Finally, Malin sighed. Thank you. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but it helps to know you're here. Jason reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Always. We'll figure it out together. Okay? She gave him a small, hesitant smile. Okay. As they sat there, hands intertwined, Jason felt a quiet determination settle in his chest. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they'd face them side by side. Chapter 6. The Great Debate. Jason had never seen so many dignitaries in one place. The Kalari High Council chamber was an enormous oval room, its walls lined with crystalline panels that glowed faintly with the shifting colors of their world's sun. Seated in a semicircle at the far end were 7 council members, their elaborate robes shimmering like liquid silver. The chamber's acoustics amplified every word, and Jason couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. Malin stood at his side, her posture straight and composed, though Jason could see the tension in her hands. They were here to present a plea that had never been made before. A case for personal autonomy in a society that had always prioritized collective duty above all else. Malin's request to reject her appointed role as a council representative had been met with confusion, resistance, and even anger. Today, she was allowed to formally present her case before the council and the gathered audience of Kalari citizens. Jason leaned toward her, his voice low. You've got this. Just speak from the heart. Malin gave him a quick glance, a flicker of gratitude passing over her face, before she stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. Honored counselors, she began, her voice steady. I come before you today not to reject our traditions, but to ask that we consider their impact on the individuals who serve them. A murmur ran through the audience, but Malin pressed on. For generations, our people have followed the path laid before us, trusting in the wisdom of our elders and the structures they built. I was raised to believe that my role was preordained, that my mark, she touched the faint, glowing pattern on her wrist, defined my future. And yet, as I have grown, I have come to question whether this path should be absolute. One of the council members, a stern-faced elder named Valerian, raised a hand. Do you suggest that our traditions are flawed, Malin? That our ancestors were wrong to guide us in this way? Malin inclined her head respectfully. I suggest only that no tradition is beyond scrutiny. Times change. Our understanding evolves. To remain rigid is to risk stagnation. Another counselor, younger and more curious-looking, leaned forward. And what would you propose in place of the path? Jason watched as Malin stood her ground. I propose choice. Let those who bear the mark decide if they will serve or if they will forge a different path. By allowing choice, we honor not only our collective heritage but also the individuality of our people. This time, the murmur was louder, more animated. Valeran looked displeased. You would have us abandon the foundation of our society for the whims of individual preference? Jason decided it was time to speak. He stepped forward, drawing the attention of the chamber. Honored counselors, I'm an outsider here, and I don't claim to fully understand your culture. But I can tell you this. A society that allows its members to choose their destiny is stronger for it. People are more committed, more dedicated, when they follow a path they believe in, not just the one that's assigned to them. The room went silent again, save for the faint hum of the crystalline panels. Malin turned to Jason, a mix of surprise and admiration in her expression. She hadn't expected him to step in, but his words seemed to have struck a chord with at least a few of the counselors. A third member of the council, a woman with sharp eyes and a thoughtful expression, addressed Malin. And if we were to grant such a choice, what would you do? Would you abandon the mark entirely? Malin shook her head. No. I respect what it represents. I respect our history, but I would choose to serve in a way that aligns with my skills and my passions. I would not serve out of obligation, but out of genuine commitment. The younger counselor who had spoken earlier nodded slowly. An intriguing perspective. Valeran, however, was unconvinced. You speak of individuality, but what of our unity? What of the bond that holds us together as a people? If everyone follows their own whims, how can we remain strong? Jason interjected again. You don't lose unity by giving people a choice. You strengthen it. People who choose to stay are the ones who truly believe in the cause. They become leaders, innovators, people your society can rely on. Isn't that worth considering? For a moment, there was no response. The counselors exchanged glances, some clearly skeptical, others thoughtful. Finally, Valeran spoke. This is not a decision to be made lightly. We will deliberate and give our ruling in due course. The chamber filled with the sounds of hushed conversation as Malin and Jason stepped back. Once outside the council hall, Jason turned to Malin. You were incredible in there, he said. I know they didn't give you an answer yet, but I think you reached at least a few of them. Malin let out a breath she'd been holding. Thank you, Jason. I couldn't have done this without you. He grinned. Anytime. Now let's get out of here. I could really use a strong cup of whatever passes for coffee on this planet. Malin smiled for the first time that day. I think I know just the place. Together, they walked away from the towering chamber, leaving the weight of the council's decision behind them for now. Chapter 7: New Horizons. The buzz of the ship's engines settled into a low, constant hum as Jason guided the small transport vessel away from the orbital docks of Zalera 5. Beside him, Malin studied the navigation charts on the console's hollow display, her delicate fingers gliding over the controls as she cross-checked their route. I think if we adjust the angle by 2 degrees, we'll avoid the field of debris in Sector 11, she said, her voice steady. It'll add a bit of time, but we won't have to worry about shield strain. Jason nodded, his hands moving over the control panel. Sounds like a plan. I trust your judgment. Malin glanced at him, her expression softening. Thank you. I'm still getting used to piloting these human vessels. They're different from what I'm used to. Different good or different bad? Jason teased. She gave a small smile. Different. Interesting. The ship shifted course slightly, following the new trajectory Malin had calculated. Outside the viewport, the void of space stretched endlessly, punctuated by pinpricks of starlight and the occasional passing freighter. For a moment, they both simply watched the stars, the silence between them comfortable. So, Jason began, breaking the quiet. This humanitarian mission on Liven Prime. What can we expect when we land? Malin tilted her head thoughtfully. The colony there is struggling with a water shortage. Their filtration systems are outdated, and their crops are failing. The local council has requested assistance, but they're a proud people. They won't accept help unless it's offered with respect. Jason smirked. Well, we'll just have to be extra respectful then. I have no doubt you'll manage, Malin said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Jason leaned back in his seat, glancing at her. You seem more at ease these days. I don't know, weighed down. Malin paused, her fingers hovering over the console. Perhaps that's because I've finally found a purpose that feels right for me. Helping people, learning from other cultures, working alongside you. It's also different from what I thought my life would be. I'm glad, Jason said sincerely. You deserve to feel that way. She turned to him fully, her luminous eyes meeting his. And you, Jason? Is this the life you imagined for yourself? He chuckled softly. Not exactly. I used to think I'd end up working on a cargo ship, running goods between starports, maybe starting a small trade business someday. But now, he shrugged, now I'm part of something bigger. Something that actually makes a difference. Malin regarded him for a moment, then smiled. You truly believe in what we're doing, don't you? Yeah, Jason admitted. I do. They fell into a companionable silence again, each lost in their thoughts as the ship cruised toward its destination. Eventually, Jason spoke up. You know, I've been meaning to ask, what made you decide to come with me in the first place? I mean, you could have stayed on Zalera 5 or gone back to your home world. What made you choose this? Malin considered his question carefully. At first, it was curiosity. I wanted to understand your world, your culture. But then, as we spent more time together, I realized how much I enjoyed working with you. How much I admired your willingness to help others, even when it wasn't easy. Jason felt a warmth spread through him. Well, I guess I must be doing something right. She nodded, her expression turning serious. You have a way of inspiring people, Jason. You make them believe things can get better. Maybe it's because I believe that too, he said. Malin reached out, placing her hand gently on his. You've given me something I didn't think I could have, a sense of freedom. For that, I'll always be grateful. Jason looked at her, the connection between them deepening in that moment. He turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. We're in this together now, Malin, and I'm glad you're here. The ship's console chimed, signaling that they were nearing Liven Prime. Malin withdrew her hand slowly, her cheeks tinged with a faint glow. We should prepare for landing. Right? Jason said, his voice softer. Let's get to work. As they approached the planet's atmosphere, both of them felt a quiet determination. Not just to help the colony, but to continue building the partnership they had formed. Together, they were charting a new course, one that neither of them had anticipated but both were eager to follow. Chapter 8. Among the Stars. Jason adjusted the frequency on the ship's comm panel, tuning in to a channel he hadn't heard in years. Static gave way to a gentle melody, a signal transmitted from one of the outer colony planets they'd helped last season. The song was a tradition of the settlers, meant to celebrate cooperation and friendship. Listening to it brought a quiet smile to his face. Malin stepped into the cockpit, a datapad in her hands. She glanced at the console, then at Jason, who was leaning back in the pilot's chair, one foot propped up on the dash. Another old broadcast? She asked, setting the datapad down on a nearby console. Jason nodded. Yeah, I remember hearing this the first time we went to Archean. They were so grateful for the supplies we brought, they started sending these out as a kind of thank you. Figured I'd tune in while we're en route to the next stop. Malin settled into the co-pilot's seat, her luminous eyes soft as she listened. It's peaceful. That's what I like about it, Jason said. He let the melody play a little longer before switching it off. So, what's on your mind? You've got that. I need to talk about something. Look. She laughed lightly. You're very observant. Comes with spending all this time together, he replied, leaning forward. What's up? Malin glanced at the datapad, her fingers brushing over its smooth surface. I was reviewing our recent missions, thinking about how far we've come since the Festival of Lights on Zalera 5. It's strange to look back and see how much has changed. Jason tilted his head. Good strange or bad strange? Good mostly, she said. I've learned so much, met so many different beings, and seen things I never imagined. It's made me realize how small my world used to be. Yeah, Jason said thoughtfully. Once you step out into the galaxy, your whole perspective shifts. It's like realizing you were living in one room of a giant house. Malin smiled at the analogy. That's a good way to put it. And you've been a big part of that change, Jason. Working with you, seeing how dedicated you are to helping others. It's inspiring. Hey, it's not just me, Jason said, waving a hand. You've made just as much of a difference. Honestly, I'm not sure I could have done all this without you. Her smile grew warmer. It's been a partnership, hasn't it? Jason nodded. The best one I've ever had. The ship's navigation computer beeped, indicating their destination was approaching. Jason glanced at the screen. Looks like we're almost there. Another station, another set of problems to solve. Sometimes I wonder if there's an end to it, Malin said. So many worlds, so many people in need. I don't think it ever really ends, Jason admitted. But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. Every little bit helps. Malin leaned back, her gaze drifting out the viewport. You're right. I just hope we can keep making a difference. Jason looked over at her. We will. Together. She turned to meet his eyes, and for a moment, the cockpit seemed to shrink around them, the vastness of space outside a distant memory. It was in these quiet moments, away from the noise and chaos of their missions, that Jason felt the strength of their bond most deeply. Thank you, Jason, Malin said softly, for everything. He reached out, placing a hand on hers. Thank you, Malin, for choosing to share this journey with me. The ship's console pinged again, breaking the moment. Jason chuckled and sat back. All right, let's get ready to dock. Malin nodded, her hand lingering on his for just a second longer before she turned her attention to the controls. Together, they prepared for the next step in their shared adventure, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead among the stars.